Hey guys, Alan Watson here from Golf Plus, recently named to Golf Digest's Top 100 Fitters in America, and we couldn't be prouder. I'm in our Panama City location today, and I'm going to be working on a set of tailor-made irons here for a customer. We've got our build sheet for this gentleman, and we need to put some new shafts in these clubs because, you know, most clubs just don't come with the right parts. So we've got to get the right shafts in here, we've got to get them swing weighted, we've got to get them cut to length, and of course we've got to get them gripped. So we're going to go through that process today, and in that process as well, while we're building this set of clubs, I'm also going to show you our build shop here, how we have everything organized. And so some of you guys that are maybe wanting to build a home garage can do that. You can kind of see some of our ideas, and anyway, we're really proud of this place, so pretty cool stuff. So let's get started. All right, so you'll probably notice that these heads don't have shafts in them, and in this particular case, we're actually going to borrow the shafts from another set because inventory is a little tight this year with COVID and everything, and so we don't always have everything that we need. But we've got a brand new set of these irons, Mizuno irons. You can see they still got the plastic on them and everything. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull the shafts out of this set, and then we're going to repurpose them because they are brand new, you know, so they're just like coming from the factory. So we're going to tighten them down into our puller here, and we're going to be really careful not to squeeze it too tight because this is a graphite shaft. If it was a steel shaft, we would want to be careful, but with graphite we have to be even more careful. And then of course we're going to apply gentle heat. I like to keep it moving so that I don't create any kind of heat spots or anything. Even when we're using this industrial heater, it's basically just like a hair dryer, but a little bit more powerful. Your wife or girlfriend would not want to use this on her hair. But we don't want to go to the torch because the torch is a little bit too powerful. We're going to use that for steel shafts. We don't use that for graphite. Now our puller is going to apply pressure, and that combined with the heat, pop the head off the shaft. All right, so that took it off clean, no damage, and the inside's relatively clean too. We do have a little bit of a tip weight that we're gonna have to take out of there, so we'll demonstrate that next. But there's our shaft. Now, one important note about safety. Safety glasses and gloves are a really good idea. Now, I'm not wearing glasses when I'm taking off the graphite shaft because I'm just using this little heat gun. It's not producing a quick flame or torch or anything like that. When I'm using a real torch, I'm always going to wear my glasses, and if I know I'm going to be touching the head that's really hot, or if I need to hold a head in my hand as I drill or something like that, then I'm definitely going to wear gloves. And I can also put on a protective apron if I want to keep glue off myself or whatever. Obviously we're not gluing right now, so not worried about that just yet, but definitely if you're unsure of what you're doing or if you want to be really cautious, you need to wear all that stuff. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is prep this tip, kind of clean it up a little bit, and try to test fit it into the head that it's going to go in. So this came out of an 8-iron, so we're going to grab our 8-iron head. It's right there. And then we're just going to clean that tip up real quick. When it comes to tip prepping, especially graphite shafts, we don't want to take any of the graphite fiber off. We only want to take the paint finish off. So some graphites are going to be super bright colored, so they're going to be easy to identify the difference between the paint and the tip and the graphite. This particular one has sort of a mirrored looking finish, almost looks like steel. I'm just going to gently scrub that away with some sandpaper. You will see some people in videos and things turn these on a belt. You can use a belt sander, but you've got to be very careful because you don't want to dig into those fibers. You don't want it to break or crack because you've dug too far in. And you also don't want, if you don't hold it perfectly still on a belt, if I'm not turning this thing perfectly smooth, I might create a flat spot, and I definitely don't want that. So I'm just going to gently take off that little bit of glue, and now this tip is ready to go. If this was a shaft that had not been tip prepped from the factory, so if it looked like one of these graphite shafts, then I would mark it for the length that I wanted for it to go into the hosel, and then again I would use the sandpaper, I'd put it in a vise or whatever, but you can see the difference between a painted tip and an exposed tip there where the paint's already been removed. And some shafts will come from the factory with that tip already removed, but that's pretty rare. Most of the time you're going to have to do that work yourself. All right, so I've got my 8-iron shaft, I've got my 8-iron head, and they definitely go together. Just a touch loose, so we're probably going to have to use a shim. We're also going to use a collared ferrule that's going to help take up some of the gap there. TaylorMade uses a special collared ferrule, and we keep those here in our shop, so we will have the correct ferrule for that. This particular set that we're working on is what we call a short set. It only has 7-iron down through the gap wedge, so it's a 5-piece iron set. And the reason why this particular set of irons is a short set is because this particular client needs hybrids. So we have the 3 hybrids. His 4, 5, and 6-iron are all going to be hybrids instead of irons. So where we normally would be building a 4 to the pitching wedge or a 4 to the gap set, this set, like I said, a little bit shorter, only a 5-piece set. They're going to be standard length. We're going to bend them 1 degree upright. We're going to put Golf Pride tour wrapped standard grips on them, and we're using these UST Recoil 460 ESX F3 shafts. So that's sort of all the build parameters. So the next thing we do is we want to check the length once we've got our shaft and head together. So we'll come down over here to our ruler. We'll put this guy out. That's 36.5, so that's perfect for an 8-iron. We work off of a 37-inch 7-iron, so that's going to be perfect. One thing we can check while we're at it is we can go ahead and check that swing weight. So what we'll do there is we're going to go ahead and grab the real grip that we're going to use, that tour wrap that we talked about. Now that we know our length is correct, your length has to be correct to be able to check your swing weight. Otherwise, your weight's going to come out funny. So with these being graphite, a lot of times the manufacturers will make them a little bit light. And sure enough, this one's coming up a little lighter than I like it to be, kind of in the C8 range. We'd like to get that up to at least a D0 to make it swing a little bit more normal. So what we'll do is we'll add a lead tip weight, just like what you saw in the club when I took it apart, and then that will give us the head weight and the proper swing weight. And you know, just kind of for informational purposes, swing weight, that is a measurement of the balance point of the golf club. So as you can see, we're on a little bit of a fulcrum here, and we're using a heavy weight back in the back, and that shows you where the weight is. So the total weight of the golf club is just the weight of all the components. It's the total weight of the golf club is the weight of the head, the weight of the shaft, the weight of the grip. But the swing weight is kind of what it feels like when you swing it. So a lighter swing weight means you're not going to feel the head as much, and a heavier swing weight means you are going to feel the head more. So depending on the components that you use, different swing weights are going to naturally occur, and then we can adjust those with tip weights and or butt weights at the other end of the golf club to get that right. And just so you know, just kind of as an aside, when you go to get your clubs re-gripped, or maybe you've had a set for a while and you like the way they feel, and then maybe you decide you want to go up from a standard grip to a heavier grip, that's going to change the swing weight. So you may want to talk to your club fitter, your club builder, or your local shop about that if you're changing grips. You go from a 50-gram weight grip to maybe up to a 65, swing weight's going to go up just a little, or excuse me, it's going to come down just a little bit. So those are just things to consider. Just going to remove some of the old tape here. I've seen guys use torches to do that before, and you can do that especially on steel shafts, but I will caution you that it's going to get extremely hot and you may burn yourself. And the other thing, of course, is you wouldn't want to use a torch, again, on the graphite to remove anything. So always using that heat gun. This is actually I mean, it's hot, I feel it, but it's not enough that I'm going to hurt myself. Again, if I was using that on steel shaft, I could use a good old-fashioned torch and really heat that up. Then, of course, I'd have to have my gloves and my safety glasses. If we use the torch on graphite, especially on this end, we might end up causing some damage to the fiber when we go to take that tape off. You wouldn't actually even notice it. It might happen internally, but then the problem would be if I've weakened it and then I go to hit the ground, that thing could crack and break. It could be dangerous for me or somebody I'm playing with, but worst of all is just, you know, you're going to damage the golf club, and these shafts are like $65 a piece, so you don't want to waste those for sure. All right, so let's head over to our build station. So sometimes when we take shafts apart, we're going to have a little bit of residual glue up inside there. So definitely going to switch to our safety goggles now, and I'm going to get my 2-part epoxy here. Pretty much everything in the golf industry is a 2-part epoxy. What we're going to do is just very carefully drill out that little bit of glue that's inside there, because we need to not have an air pocket created by that. Plus we need to be able to get the tip weight in there. So we're just going to very gently push that up, and then we'll just tamp that out. And then there's that little bit of glue that I was telling you about that had come out of from where it had been glued the first time, so the epoxy. So now it's cleaned out. Now we don't have the problem with the air. Test a little tip weight here. See if we can get our swing weight where we want it. This is a pretty standard size grip. It weighs about 50 grams. A lot of your grips are going to weigh around there. Some, of course, are going to be heavier. Some, of course, are going to be lighter. And like we talked about before, that can really affect the swing weight. So my swing weight is just under D0, just a hair. By the time I add the glue and the ferrule, we'll be right where we want to be. So we're going to go ahead and put this baby together. Okay, so I've got all my components together, and for the sake of argument, let's say that I've got all the clubs ready, but we're just going to demonstrate one, of course. I've got my head, I've got my shaft, I've got my lead tip weight, I've got the correct ferrule that I want to use, that's the tailor-made matching ferrule with that little bit of a countersink like we talked about that's going to fill up that gap in there. And then I've got my brass shim, which I'm probably going to need because this shaft has got a little bit of a taper to it, and this hosel is a parallel. So for them to go together, there might be just a little bit of a gap in there. So we're going to mix up our two-part epoxy. I generally use about a dime size of each epoxy when I'm mixing. Some people will weigh it out on a scale and make it absolutely perfect, and I think that's fine if you want to do it that way. I've been doing this for 26 years, and very rarely do I see the epoxy not bond correctly. All right, so once we've mixed up our two-part epoxy here, we're going to go ahead and put kind of the bulk of it inside the hosel, and I kind of use a swirling motion when I put that stick in there to make sure that it covers all the sides. Then I let gravity do the work there. Now I'm going to roll that out, get a nice thin layer on the hosel. I'm going to insert the ferrule, and I'm going to push it up to length with the head, and as I spin that out, you'll notice that there's another thin layer of glue on there, and that's really, kind of what we're trying to do. I've got to get a little bit of glue on my tip weight here, and then I'm going to put my shim on. I'm going to roll out that last little bit of glue on there, and then I'm going to spin it and twist it all the way into having that set. I'm going to tamp it, make sure that it's set correctly. I'm going to line up my graphics, and then I'm going to wipe away all of the excess with a cloth here. We like to sort of pre-cut them into little squares, and that just makes it a little bit cleaner and easier than grabbing a big towel or a big rag or whatever. I'm going to use some of my gripping solution to wipe away the excess because I don't want any of that glue to dry anywhere. It would look bad and it would be hard to remove. And then sometimes this ferrule will come up just a little bit and it won't seat just properly. So I'll come back over here to my shaft puller, and I'll actually use it as a pusher instead of a puller, and that will squeeze it tight. And then of course I've got to retamp it, and then I've got to wipe away all the excess again. So we kind of go through the process twice, but that ensures that everything is seated properly, and it ensures that my ferrule doesn't have a gap, which just looks bad. And let's face it, ferrules are mostly cosmetic. There's no real, you could build a set of clubs without a ferrule. It probably wouldn't be the end of the world, but we want them to look pretty and all that jazz. Now I'm going to make sure that my graphics down the back are lined up properly. Some shafts have graphics that go down the front and some go down the back. This particular one is designed to go down the back. And then once I'm done that, I'm going to support it with my hand all the way over to the drying rack. I don't want to let this slip. I don't want to let it let go or cause any kind of issues with that head coming loose. So I'm going to support it all the way into the drying rack. I'm going to let it sit in the drying rack. If we're using our long dry epoxy, it's going to sit till the next day. If we're using our quick cure, this is like a 30-minute cure. So literally you could build the club, let it sit for about 30 minutes, put the grip on it, and theoretically you could go out and play with it. Now we don't recommend that. We prefer clubs to sit at least a couple of hours, but I have built drivers before and headed straight to the course and gone and hit them with no problems. Man, we just love fixing clubs here, building clubs here, fitting clubs. That's what we do at Golf Plus. So if you're ever in the Golf Plus area, which is the Dothan, Alabama and Panama City Beach, so on the panhandle of Florida down here, if you're ever in this area, come see one of our shops. If you need a quick regrip, if you need a full set of reshafts, if you need to get custom fit, whatever you want to do, we can do it. We can handle it here at Golf Plus.